Welcome everyone to another Far East Wargaming Battle Report, and this week I'm very happy to have a new joiner to the channel, Matthew.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you for having me as well.
Thanks for being here. Matthew has an amazingly painted Night Lord's army. It's absolutely brand new to the channel, so we're really excited to have that on board for this week. We will have a Zone Mortalis game for you because Matthew doesn't have all of his vehicles finished yet, I don't think.
Unfortunately, no. If we do a foot slogging field, however, that would be a slaughter for me.
I think it would. So we're going to play ZM for this particular mission, and we're playing the sector control from the Siege of Chthoniya.
That is correct.
We have 1,750 points in the two armies. You've got the Traitor Night Lords.
Of course, for the War Master.
Absolutely, and I've got the Iron Hands, the Loyalists, who are going to see if they can stem the tide. So looking forward to this one with a brand new army that I think you're really going to enjoy, and we'll be back with the armies in just a moment.
Here we have 750 points of Loyalist Iron Hands running the Company of Bitter Iron Rite of War. The warlord for this force is an Iron Hands Iron Father Praetor in Cataphracti Terminator armor. He is wielding a Paragon Blade and a Volkite Charger. His warlord trait is Silver Iron Will. Accompanying him is a 5-strong Cataphracti command squad. 3, including the standard bearer, have been upgraded with Chain Fists, and 2 have been upgraded with Power Fists. For elites, we have a Contemptor Dreadnought with Gravis Power Fist and inbuilt Melter Gun, and also a Gravis Melter Cannon. The second elite choice is a 5-strong Gorgon Terminator squad. The Hammer Bearer has been upgraded with a Cyber Familiar. 2 of the Gorgons have been upgraded with Chain Fists, and the remaining 2 are wielding Power Fists. For troops, we have 2 identical 10-man Medusan Immortal squads. The sergeants for each have been upgraded with Artificer armor and Power Fists, and one of the Immortals in each squad has been upgraded with a Melter Gun. The third troop slot is taken up by a 15-man tactical squad. The sergeant has been upgraded with Artificer armor and a Power Fist, and one of the legionnaires has been upgraded with a Legion Vexilla. The fourth troop slot and last unit for this force is taken up by a 5-strong tactical support squad. The entire squad has been upgraded with plasma guns, and the sergeant is in power armor. This rounds up 1,750 points of Zone Mortalis Loyalist Iron Hands running the Company of Bitter Iron Rite of War. Here we have 1,750 points of Traitor Night Lords using the Zone Mortalis Force Org chart. The warlord for this force is a Praetor in Artificer armor with a Mastercrafted Paragon Blade, a Volkite Serpenter, and a Warhawk Jump Pack. For his warlord trait, he is using Flaymaster. Accompanying him is a 9-man command squad, all upgraded with Warhawk Jump Packs. 3 have been upgraded with a pair of Lightning Claws. 2 have been upgraded with Combat Shields and Power Fists, and 3 have been upgraded with Combat Shields and Power Swords. The Standard Bearer has been upgraded with a Power Sword. For elites, we have a 3-strong Apothecarian detachment, all wearing power armor. 1 has been upgraded with a power axe, the other 2 are wielding chainswords. The second elite is a Contemptor Dreadnought with Gravis Power Fist and Gravis Chain Fists. They both have inbuilt melter guns. For troops, we start with 2 identical 15-man strong tactical squads. The sergeants have both been upgraded with Artificer armor, both units have a Legion Vexilla, and all of them have been upgraded with chain bayonets. The third troop slot is taken up by a 10-man tactical support squad. The entire unit has been upgraded with plasma guns, and one of the Legionnaires has been upgraded with a Legion Vexilla. The final troop slot and the last unit for this force is a 10-man assault squad. The sergeant has been upgraded with Artificer armor and a pair of lightning claws. 2 of the Legionnaires have been upgraded with power swords, the rest are wielding chainswords. This rounds up 1750 points of Traitor Nightlords in a Zone Mortalis force. Here we have the terrain for today's game of Sector Control. We've set it up with some very open play. There are doors breaking it up, but there are no areas that aren't accessible by all models.
Deployment for the Iron Hands, and although I lost the strategic advantage role, Matthew was kind enough to actually let me go first. He's elected to go second like the sneaky Night Lords player that he is. So I am running the company of Bitter Iron, which makes Immortals having Line and Heart of the Legion and troops choices, which is incredibly helpful. So my first unit that went down is this 10-man strong unit of Immortals on my right flank, ready to go into one of the opposing quarters, hopefully in the first turn. I won't be scoring on the first turn, however, since the scoring takes place at the beginning of each turn. In the middle, we have, of course, the Contemptor with the Gravis Melta-Cannon and the Melta-Gun in the fist. He's going to go just straight up the middle and just make a nuisance of himself, as Contemptors for the Iron Hands usually do. And then finally, on my left flank, I use my remaining 3 reinforcement points to put down the second unit of Immortals, and directly behind them, the Iron Father and his command squad. The idea here is 2 scoring units, hopefully loading into that corner after the end of my turn 1 movement puts me in a position, hopefully, to score in turn 2. Now, I do unfortunately have a few units still off the table because I did not have enough reinforcement points. I have the 5-man tactical support squad with plasmas, the Gorgon Terminators, an elite's choice, which would have cost 2 points, and then finally the 15-man tactical blob. I tried to maximize as many scoring units as I could to start the game, which is the reason why the Gorgons are off and the Plasmas are off as well. So that's it for the Iron Hands. Hopefully it puts me in a position to grab some advantage in turn 1.
So for the Night Lord's deployment phase, I've elected to put one 15-man tac squad on my far left, the Iron Hands far right, with an apothecary. The idea is it's an empty table, just sprint to one corner and hopefully they stay alive to the end of the game. Close to my center, I have my Praetor with a 9-man retinue and accompanying Contemptor Dreadnought with 2 Melters in the fists. The idea is I want to sprint them into the center and cause a bit of havoc with the Iron Hands Contemptor Dreadnought. And finally, I have one 10-man Plasma Support Squad. They will be running to the far left of the Iron Hands deployment zone. The idea is to tune away at those thicker units and then have my tacticals come in later for an easy claim. And finally, in my undeployed sector, I have one 10-man assault squad. These will be running with 2 power swords and a dual lightning claws on the sergeant, and one 15-man tactical blob with an attached apothecary.
As always, before every game, we have the obligatory fist bump. Good luck, sir.
May the best man win.
Thank you very much. Now, since there's no C's, because nobody had the reinforcement points saved for that, we'll come back with the Iron Hands in just a moment. Movement for the Iron Hands, everything pretty much moved. On my right flank, of course, the Immortals went ahead and made their move into this quarter. I don't think we're going to be able to score it in turn 2, but we at least need to stop the Night Lords. In the middle, the Contemptor moved up. He didn't move his full distance because after checking the angle, I can actually draw a line of sight to the tack squad of the Night Lords and pop off a couple shots with the Gravis Melta-Cannon in the shooting phase. We'll see what happens there. Continuing to my left flank, the command squad elected to kind of go up and towards the middle rather than just staying on this left flank. I was a bit worried about the plasma guns, but I think we can actually weather the storm if they do decide to come around the corner, and probably all of them won't be able to get line of sight and shots anyhow. And then finally, the Immortals on my left flank, they just went full steam ahead directly into this corner. Again, the thinking is that on my turn 2, I hopefully have these 2 scoring units between the command squad and the Immortals in this particular zone. Next up will be shooting. Shooting for the Iron Hands, and it was pretty short and sweet because really the only thing that had range was the Contemptor that used the angle to draw a line of sight onto the Night Lords tactical squad. Now, the Night Lords did elect to displace as part of their reaction, using this as an opportunity to move aggressively. Unfortunately, it did not take all of them out of line of sight, however, and the aim of the Iron Hands Contemptor was true, and he managed to vaporize 2 of them with his Gravis Melta-Cannon. Again, that was my only shooting for this phase, but we managed to plink a couple off, but it's not going to force any sort of check. There'll be no assaults, so we'll be back with the Night Lords in just a moment.
So for the turn 1 movement phase for the Night Lords, starting on the left-hand side of my table, we will be advancing what remains of my tactical squad forward. I aim to capture this side of the corner before Jason does, and attempt to shoot his troops there. If I fail to, they'll just displace somewhere and hopefully away from the objective, giving me more time to capture it. On towards the center, I've advanced my Contemptor forward. I would like to try get a Contemptor duel if possible. If not, then he'll just be having a good time controlling the middle. Further behind that, I've advanced my tactical support squad in a sprint towards this sector of the table. The aim is by at least the second turn to be able to get in this corridor and hold line of sight down. Behind them is my Praetor with his command squad. They will be doing the same in order to control this board objective. So after a very quick shooting phase, I targeted his Immortal squad of my tactical squad, to which Jason chose to displace a few inches behind, leaving no shots fired and no blood spilt yet.
Yeah, I was able to take advantage of the reaction to kind of hug the wall and take everybody out of line of sight, but also get up a couple more inches into that particular quadrant.
You are only delaying the inevitable.
Bring it on, buddy. Start of turn 2, so we have the score 2-1 because the way that actually happened was I had my Immortals in one quadrant and my command squad in another. Matthew elected to use his command squad, claiming his home quadrant as well, so that gave us the score of 2-1, and the right flank of the Iron Hands was contested thanks to the Night Lords tactical squad. So I used 2 of my reinforcement points, the only 2 that I had after turn 1, to bring on the plasma gunners, who came on from this side and went ahead and ran up as far as possible. The 15-man tack blob came in from this side as well, going as far forward as possible, but also in a position to keep my home quadrant safe. On my right flank, the Immortals that hid in the last turn decided to come around the corner and be aggressive. Matthew did elect to go ahead and suppress, and even with all those shots and everything else, did a respectable 4 wounds, but we passed most of it. We only lost 1 of the Immortals to the incoming fire, and we did not get pinned thanks to the stubborn 10 that they have. In the middle, my Contemptor moved as far forward as possible because it actually put him in a position to not be seen by the opposing Contemptor, but allow me to shoot at the tactical squad of the Night Lords, because we want to try and whittle down the scoring units. Continuing up, the command squad went up this particular corridor, making sure to stay far enough away from the opposing Night Lord's Contemptor where he couldn't shoot at them with the 12-inch range Meltas in his fists. We're not going to be able to shoot or charge anything really ourselves, but it puts them in a good position for the next turn. And then finally, the Immortals on my left flank continued their march straight ahead, went through the doorway, safe on the other side of this wall. We shouldn't take any incoming fire even after the Night Lords move in their turn. We will have shooting next, and we'll come back. Shooting for the Iron Hands. We started with the Contemptor, and I went in this particular order because I figured this is exactly what was going to happen. The Contemptor tried to shoot at the tack squad. Matthew displaced to avoid the incoming Gravis Melta-Cannon, more aggressively coming towards my Immortals. My Immortals then had the opportunity to shoot everything they had, and we managed to actually knock down 3 of the Tactical Marines, all from bolter fire, because of course the Melta-Gun misses. That's what Melta-Guns do. The only other shooting I had in this particular phase was a single member of my command squad. The Combi Bolter was in a position to shoot at the Night Lord's Contemptor in the lucky chance that we managed to squeak a wound through, but actually nothing happened there. So no more shooting. I don't have any assaults. Next up, Night Lords.
Starting off with my reinforcements, I elected to plump a 15-man tactical squad with an Apothecary in this corner. The idea is to try contest this side a bit more and potentially get a few cheeky shots off at Jason's Immortals. Moving from the right side of my deployment, I have elected to advance, not run, but walk my tactical support squad slightly more forward into the corridor. The idea is to gun down his command squad and hopefully snatch a few cheeky kills. Behind them, my command squad is sprinting towards the corner of this table edge, just in case my tacticals can't get the job done in clearing out the Immortals. On towards the center, I've advanced my Contemptor behind, very honorable, the Iron Hands Dreadnought to get a few cheeky shots off with his Melta-Guns. Finally, in the final quadrant, I've elected not to move, but instead weather the storm and face the Iron Hands in honorable combat. So, start off the Night Lord shooting phase. We opened fire on the Immortals right in this corner. Quite a good shooting phase, knocked down a couple of Jason's guys.
Yeah, you got 4. That was a lot of shots because you were Fury of the Legion and you stood still and you were outnumbering me, and the net result was 4 Immortals went down. But thankfully we passed our break check on a perfect 10 stubborn.
And like our Legion, quantity over quality.
There you go.
Moving towards the middle, my Contemptor fired both of his Melta-Guns towards Jason's Contemptor. Unfortunately, 1 miss, and that 1 hit did nothing.
I did elect to use my extra shooting phase reaction first here, so that was to displace further away, and the idea was to make that charge further for the Night Lord should he decide to charge that Contemptor in.
Now towards the center, where there's a bit more spicy shooting going on, I elected to rapid fire my Plasma support squad towards his command squad, knocking down one of his Terminators, taking 2 wounds on his Iron Father, but unfortunately at the cost of one of my own guys blowing up.
I did react here as well. The idea was advancing towards the Plasma Gunners to put myself into a better charge in the following turn. Just some really bad rolls there. Even on a 3-up invuln for the Iron Father with Cyber Familiar, he still did not tank whatsoever, and the result was 1 guy goes down.
And finally, towards the final corner, my Reinforcement Tactical Squad rapid fire towards his Immortal Squad, but unfortunately, due to bad aim and maybe sabotaged ammunition, we only knocked 1 Immortal down. Alright, so I've decided to declare a charge on my Contemptor towards Jason's very tough Iron Hands Contemptor, requiring a 7-inch total to get in. Ooh, and we fail.
Yeah, we got lucky there. No reaction. Turn 3 for the Iron Hands, and we totaled up the score at the end of turn 2. There was 1 contested quarter, with the Night Lord's Tack Squad and the weakened Immortal Squad, so no points there. I didn't score any points in the other contested quarter where the command squad and the tac squad of the Night Lords were. I did, however, score 1 point for my 15-man blob that was holding down my own quarter. And then I used my last 2 reinforcement points earned at the end of turn 2 to bring on my Gorgons. I elected to do it this turn because if I'm holding them for a flank or something like that, there's a chance that the game could actually end on turn 4. So I went ahead and wanted to bring them in as soon as possible, and hopefully they'll be able to do something useful. Not much else moved, actually. So there was a critical move over on this side where the Contemptor decided to play the mission, and instead of going after his fallen brother, he decided to move forward as far as possible because it gave him the angle to make a charge on this tactical squad, and we could potentially actually wipe that scoring unit out and allow me to actually generate points in this particular quadrant. The other thing that moved was the Plasma Support Squad. They had just enough distance to move up, open that door, and put 4 of them in line of sight to shoot at the Contemptor in rapid fire, which is actually pretty helpful. And then the last move was the 15-man tactical blob. They moved up to allow as many as possible to be able to shoot down the hallway at the opposing tactical squad, but yet still wanted to keep myself in this particular quadrant as well as try to stay out of line of sight of the enemy Contemptor. Shooting for the Iron Hands, and it was somewhat effective, much more effective this turn than the previous. So starting over on my right flank, the first thing to shoot was the Contemptor. Because of the angle, I knew that I couldn't actually kill enough enemy to take me out of my charge. So he fired everything. He managed to kill 1 of the Night Lords. And then the Immortals shot bolt pistols and their melt-a-gun, and they managed to kill a couple more of the Night Lords, who promptly decided that they were going to flee, failing their break check. They only flee 1d6 because of the Vexilla, but lucky for me, I'm going to actually still be able to charge that unit if I want to in the assault phase. Continuing into the middle, the Plasma Gunners elected to try and shoot rapid firing into the opposing Contemptor, but Matthew wisely displaced, pulling him completely out of line of sight, and so their shots were wasted. In the middle, continuing again, my command squad, now that I don't have to worry about a reaction, fired everything they had into the Plasma Gunners, who are their intended charge. And we did absolutely nothing. You would think that with Machinator Array Melt-A-Gun and Combi Bolters and everything else, we'd do something there, but alas, it was not to be. The 15-man blob, those that still had the range, went ahead and fired into the Night Lord's tactical squad on the far edge. We did manage to knock 1 of them down from our bolter fire. The Immortals also added their shots into the same squad, having not moved. They went ahead and fired rapid fire into that squad, and we knocked down a couple more. It was not enough to force a check, unfortunately, and that big blob of tacticals is still there. But all in all, a pretty good round of shooting, I would say. There will be a couple critical assaults. Assault for the Iron Hands. There was 2 assaults. We started with the Contemptor charging into the tactical squad. I actually elected not to charge in the Immortals, even though they fired their bolt pistols and melt-a-gun. The idea was I save the Immortals from potentially dying. I don't want to lose my scoring unit in this particular quadrant. The Contemptor did what Contemptors are supposed to do. He charged in, he killed 3, he took no wounds in return, and that unit went ahead and broke. We didn't sweep them, unfortunately, and thanks to the Vexilla, they basically just fled and putting their heads in the corner over there with a chance to rally at the start of the next turn for the Night Lords. And then in the middle, this was a much more successful assault, but it went the way that it should, which was the Ironfather and his command squad charged into the Plasma Gunners. They did activate their Legion advanced reaction attempting to flee away, but it wasn't enough to actually take them out of the charge from the command squad and Ironfather. We butchered the entire squad on the charge, and then we went ahead and consolidated backwards slightly, mostly just to keep us from being in line of sight of the tactical squad. So yeah, all in all, a pretty successful turn, I think, for the Iron Hands, but the Night Lords still have a ton of stuff that has a lot of combat and shooting. We'll see what happens in their turn.
So, start of Night Lord's turn 3 movement phase. We attempt to control the doors to crush an Iron Hand in its grasp, but unfortunately, Jason's put a virus in the system and we were unable to do so.
Ferrus Manus protects.
And then after that, we rolled a rally check, to which my unit did pass, And since they're very stubborn people, they decide not to learn their lesson and move closer towards the Immortals.
It's actually pretty smart because since the scoring is done at the end of the turn, that puts you in a position to actually contest this quarter. And I don't have any movement phase reactions because of the Warlord trait for the Iron Hand.
Finally, we also had a unit of Assault Squad late to the party, decided to come in on my table edge to just give myself that extra victory point. Moving towards the center, my Praetor with his command squad, offended that the Iron Father gunned down their brethren in front of them, has elected to move forward towards the Praetor in order to potentially issue a challenge. Finally, with my remaining tactical squad, we will choose not to move them, hoping to rapid fire and whittle down the Immortals. And before I forget, our Contemptor has moved 8 inches towards the table edge in the hopes to charge that juicy tactical squad. So, Night Lord shooting phase, I had my tactical squad target chasing some mortals with some snap shooting, but unfortunately all failed to hit. Then I targeted the same unit of immortals with my assault squad, 3 bolt pistol shots, managing to wound and kill one of his immortals.
Yep, I failed my feel no pain, and you didn't want to shoot at the Contemptor because bolt pistols wouldn't be able to hurt it, thanks to the Iron Hand Special Legion rule.
So, further moving through, there has been no shots fired towards his command squad. I do not want him to displace 4 inches back, making my already bad dice rolls even worse for my charge later. Finally, my tactical squad, Fury of the Legion and rapid fired towards his immortals. However, with good saves and a good artificer, only 2 models went down. However, one was his sergeant.
Yeah, I failed on the last attempt to tank, and we used the SN rules here, so I had 4 chances, and of course it was the 4th roll that he rolled the 1 and then failed his feel no pain. So that unit is now down 2 guys, but thankfully it was not enough to trigger a break check.
So, our first resolved charge, which will be the Contemptor into the 15-man tack squad. Unfortunately, not the best swings for my Contemptor here, taking out 3 iron hands, but in turn, suffering 3 wounds.
I got super lucky there, so I hit with 7, or I actually wounded with 7 of the crack grenades, and you failed 4 wounds, or 3 wounds for me, but I have a Legion Vexilla, so I actually won the combat by 1. That was pretty shocking.
Now, moving further down to the big meaty brawl between the 2 Praetors. However, he also won that round of combat, as I've only issued 3 wounds, knocking out 2 of his chosen warriors, but in turn, he issued out 4 wounds too, no?
Yeah, because one of my guys was wounded already, so you did a total of 3 wounds to me. I did 4 to you. I activated my advanced reaction, and I also killed a guy on Overwatch from the advanced reaction of the Iron Hands. Now, that didn't count to the combat, but the 4 wounds versus 3 wounds, I actually won. But you stuck with double 1 snake eyes, so that battle will actually continue. So at the end of turn 3, we totaled up the points. So because the combats actually went better than expected, there was some unique results in the scoring on the points. So my right flank this quarter was actually contested between the Immortals and the Tack Squad, so no points scored there. The Assault Squad of the Night Lords, however, did score a point for his quarter because the Contemptor in this mission does not contest, so that brings 2 points for the Night Lords. Over here in this big scrum, because the Command Squads lived, and you still have the Immortals and the Tack Squad there, that quarter was contested. And then finally, this quarter over here, I do still get credit for the Tactical Marines who somehow managed to live and survive the Contemptor charge, so I gained a point there. So the net effect was we went from 3-1 Iron Hands to 4-2. And then for the rest of my moves, it was actually quite limited. So I started with the Contemptor over on this side. He basically repositioned himself to guarantee a charge at the Assault Squad. I really want to wipe that out, hopefully. The Plasma Marines, they backed up. They positioned themselves to be able to shoot at the Assault Marines, but not actually trigger any reactions, so I don't have to worry about getting shot at, displaced, etc., or anything else. My Gorgons, they went ahead and ran because they are Indomitus armor, so they can run. So they went ahead and came all the way over here to try and hopefully help out those TAC Marines if necessary. Other than that, there was no moves because my command squad is locked in combat. My Immortals didn't want to trigger some shooting out of that big blob of tacticals. It's going to be a very important shooting phase, and actually this whole turn is going to be very important because this could swing really big depending on how it goes. Shooting for the Iron Hands. To tease out reactions, I went ahead and fired the plasma gunners first. I was not in rapid fire range, but I was within range of shooting the assault squad. Matthew wisely displaced, and that displacement actually took them out of line of sight, so the plasma gun shots were wasted. However, the Contemptor was much more effective, hitting with the Melta in the fist, the Gravis Melta cannon, and wounding and killing 3 of the assault squad, which luckily passed their break check. The Immortals elected to fire bolt pistols and a Melta gun, and they went ahead and fired into the TAC squad, the Melta gun doing the damage and killing one of the TAC squad members. But as I fired pistols and an assault weapon, I can still charge in just a moment. The only other shooting for the Iron Hands was the Immortals in the gunfight at the OK Corral with the Night Lord's TAC squad. Of course, the Melta gun missed again, but the bolters actually managed to gun down 2 of the tactical Marines. Not enough to force a check, but we keep whittling down their firepower, and maybe by the end of this game, one of these 2 units will be dead. But that's all of the shooting because everything else is locked in combat. It's going to be a very critical assault phase. Lots of assaults in this turn, and we started with the Immortals who charged into the tactical squad, hoping to actually break that scoring unit. We did manage to kill 1 in the combat. We didn't suffer any casualties in return, but the tacticals have a Vexilla, so it was a drawn combat there. The Contemptor charging in against the Assault Marines, he managed to smush 2 of the opponents, but because they braced as their reaction for his charge, they're essentially not going anywhere. So they are still stuck there. Coming over to the middle with the Contemptor versus the tactical squad, the Contemptor actually smashed 3 tactical Marines this time. We snuck 1 more wound through with crack grenades, and we have a Vexilla, so we lost by 1, but we went ahead and stuck. So thankfully they're still there and still in a position to score. And then finally the last combat, which was the massive scrum between the Ironfather and Command Squad versus the Night Lord's Praetor and Command Squad. We somehow managed to win that 3-2 for the Iron Hands, putting 2 wounds also on the Night Lord's Praetor. They once again lost the combat, but they stayed there. So we're slowly whittling them down. The question is, are we going to have enough wounds to actually survive? A little bit of a mixed bag there in the turn 4 for the Iron Hands. There's not going to be much in turn 4, I think, for the Night Lords because there's so many things in combat, but we'll come back with that.
So, for the Night Lord's turn 4, we've done the incredibly arduous task of moving my only unit which I can move, which is this tactical squad in the corner, up in order to finally do what the Night Lords do best, and which is reap the butcher's toll on the Iron Hands and hopefully get what remaining flesh they have.
Yeah, and because of my Warlord trait, again, I don't have any movement phase reactions, so you're totally free to just come on in there.
So after a very exciting shooting phase of bolt pistols into the Immortals, to which Jason did the very smart move of displacing 4 inches back, turning into 5 inches charge, we did 1 wound to which Jason's Feel No Pain came in strong, keeping them all in the game.
Yeah, I got really lucky there. I did fail the armor save because my sergeant is already dead, so it was on a normal guy, but then I passed the Feel No Pain. We'll see. I wanted to try and make your charge a little bit more difficult.
Let's just call it interesting then, shall we?
Let's do it.
So, for the units which we did have locked in combat, however, starting over in this corner for our tacticals against Jason's Immortals, we went 1-4-2 right there, coming out just on top with the wounds, thankfully. Got quite lucky with the power axe on my Apothecary especially.
You did, and I was rolling terrible for shields. You ended up winning the combat, but my stubborn 10 kept me in the fight, so we're still stuck there.
Moving on to the Contempt of the Assault Squad, after a very, very bad throw of crack grenades and a lot of lightning claw strikes, no wounds on the Dreadnought, and instead he knocks down one of our Assault Marines. However, We thankfully passed our leadership test,
Yeah,
keeping
that's
us locked in.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge, because if you had been fleeing, then you would have given up the opportunity to score a point there.
Moving further down, we had the brawl between the two Praetors again. This time, Jason coming out on top, bringing down 6 of my men and bringing my Praetor to 1 wound. However, in return, we did knock down his standard bearer, meaning he does not have line on that unit anymore.
That's correct. Yeah, I did 6 wounds, didn't kill 6 men would have been great, but it was 6 wounds that I actually did. I did win the combat, but you did stick, so it's basically my Praetor. Can he survive against all that stuff right there?
So, with our tactical squad successfully charging into Jason's Immortals, dealing 1 casualty and taking no wounds ourselves, it's quite a good melee ball that was for me.
It was, yeah. I ended up losing the combat, but it didn't matter. We stuck, and we will still be there for another round.
And finally, onto the big meaty Contemptor. As you can tell, unfortunately did not get off it quite well. However, the explosion did take out 4 of Jason's tactical marines.
Yeah, it was actually crazy. You killed 1 guy in combat. I managed to do the last 2 wounds, 1 with a crack grenade, 1 with the power fist of the sergeant, and then when you blew up, you killed 3 more of my TAC Marines. Luckily, I'm still alive and still in the fight with that unit and able to now score a point. But it is really going to come down to whether or not we have a turn 5. What we will do is we will pull up the casualties, and then we'll come back, and on camera we'll give you the latest on the points as well as the roll to see if we have a turn 5. So at the end of turn 4, we totaled up the points. Matthew scores 2 points. He gets 1 for his assault squad in his original quadrant, giving him 1 point there. And then he gets 1 in the quadrant where the battle between the command squads is going on, because I lost my standard, which means he now has 2 scoring units over there compared to my 1. So that's 2 points for Matthew, giving him 4. I scored 1 point for my tactical squad that survived the Contemptor, giving me control of my original quadrant for 1 point. And then I also scored a point on the Contemptor. As an elite's choice in this mission, it also gives up another victory point. So the score is currently 6-4 for the Iron Hands. And we're now going to film to see if we have a turn 5 on a 2-up. Matthew, please. It is. We'll be back in just a moment with turn 5. As we now have a turn 5, the end game is upon us, and there's not much on the table for either side. So there's not much moving. The plasma gunners went ahead and moved their full distance coming around this corner, basically just putting themselves in a position where possibly they may have to do some shooting depending on how the combats go. The tactical squad that defeated the Contemptor and will be promoted to veterans in our next game, they went ahead and ran their full distance. Basically what they're trying to do is just go and hide to make sure that I can claim this quarter through the end of the game. And then lastly, the only other thing that moved was the Gorgons. So the Gorgons, being in Indomitus armor, can also run, and so they came and then went ahead and ran as far as they possibly could, because there's a good chance the Praetor goes down, and I want the Gorgons to hopefully be able to go over there and clean house on what's left of the Night Lords. I won't actually have any shooting because everything either ran or is locked in combat, so we'll be back with Assault. Assault for the Iron Hands, and we did what we needed to do. So the Immortals managed to kill off that tac squad there. So first there was all misses from the sergeants of the Night Lords and the regular Immortal, but my sergeant managed to smush the Apothecary, and then the unit broke, and then we went ahead and ran them down. So that now puts us in control of this particular quadrant. The Contemptor smushed 2 of the Assault Marines, took a wound back from a crack grenade, but again, the Assault Marines stuck, which is also very helpful, allowing Matthew to claim that quadrant if they're still alive at the end of the turn. And then in the middle, there was the main event of the Praetor and the command squad of the Night Lords versus the Iron Father. The Iron Father managed to do 3 total wounds with his Paragon Blade, killing 1 set of Lightning Claws, wounding another. And we managed to survive the onslaught of attacks, passing on my 3-up Invuln, even though he's only on 1 wound left. Won the combat, but the command squad of the Night Lord still stayed there, so this is really coming down to the wire for that squad. And then finally, the attack between the Night Lord's tac squad and the Medusan Immortals. The Immortals managed to kill 1 of the tac marines of the Night Lords. The Night Lords didn't kill anybody in return, but the Vexilla saved the drawn combat for them. It's really coming down to the wire. If a couple of these combats go differently in the bottom of the 5th turn for the Night Lords, we'll see what happens.
The noose has tightened in. So, for the Night Lords, both movement, shooting, and assault phase, as there was no movement, as all my units were locked in combat, which also means there was no shooting as well. So straight to resolving combat in the assault phase. Now, my two assault squads, troops, did try to wound the Contemptor with their Power Sword and Lightning Claws, however, failed to bring the Behemoth down, and in return were slaughtered, rightfully, for their failure to the Night Taunter. Moving on to the tactical squad against the Immortals, where we fared slightly better, killing 4 of our loyalist brethren, while only taking 2 wounds, and forcing a rout as he failed his stubborn 10 on 11.
Yeah, that was a really, really bad roll. And that's actually huge for you, because if we have a turn 6, this is going to free you up to do a lot of things.
However, onto the main event, the battle-off between the Praetors, in turn slaying the Iron Father, not in honourable combat, however, and in turn only taking 1 chosen down with him.
Yep, your Paragon Blade, you snuck through the 1 wound that you needed. I was on 1 wound, and even with a 3-up invuln, I failed it. I was at the same initiative, however, and managed to slay the wounded Lightning Claws. But you're still scoring over there, and you still have your Warlord, and you just got a Warlord kill for a point. So what we're going to do is the same thing that we did at the end of turn 4. We'll go off camera, we'll total up the points, and then we'll come back, walk you through the points, and see if we have a final turn 6 or not. At the end of turn 5, we've totaled up the points at the end of that turn. So the Night Lords got 1 point for the Warlord kill, killing the Iron Father. Plus they controlled 1 quarter with the Tac Squad and the Command Squad in the same quarter. So that gives them a total of 6. The Iron Hands have 1 Immortal Squad that's still alive in this corner down here, scoring a point. The Tac Squad over here, the Heroes against the Contemptor, scoring another point. That brings us to a total of 8-6 currently in favor of the Iron Hands. However, this could actually go a lot of different ways, and we will have the roll on a 4-up. There is a turn 6. What a match. It ended up at 8-6 for the Iron Hands. We did not have a turn 6, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately, I do think the War Master will have a couple words with my Praetor at the end of this, wouldn't he?
I think he's going to, but I think the Loyalists are very happy to see the Shattered Legions that have held on to this particular piece of real estate.
Unfortunately, did not shatter them against the anvil of war, as the Salamanders would say.
Absolutely did not. So it was a very enjoyable game. I hope you enjoyed it. Your first time, I think, to play ZM with us.
Oh, definitely. It was a fantastic experience as well. Great camaraderie as well from the Loyalists, even though it hurts me to say that.
Yeah, well, we're very happy to have this army. We hope you really enjoyed the game. We definitely enjoyed having you, Matthew, and bringing your positive attitude in this beautiful Night Lords force. I hope we get to have you on the channel again.
Most definitely. It was a blast playing with you guys, especially. The terrain was lovely looking as well. And again, you can say my Night Lords were painted well, but yours were fantastic. Your Iron Hands overall, the contrast, everything.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So it did go 8-6. We didn't have a turn 6, and there was a lot of back and forth. It really could have, I think, been won at any single point if you had had a couple combats go differently. But who do you think was your man of the match?
So overall, I would have to put it to my Apothecaries. Now, these Apothecaries, fresh out of the Scholar Progenitor, the best of the best, saving 0 of all of my feel no pains I took with them. So I don't know what they were doing, but they definitely did their best to stay alive, and that's what they did.
Yes, so you did not get to see every single roll during that game, but we are not exaggerating when we say that 3 Night Lords Apothecaries scored 0 feel no pains over the course of a full game. So,
however, they do have a fresh tool of flesh to reap at the end, don't they?
They do, and I think they positioned some of their brothers in the line of fire quite well, so that was pretty well done. As far as for the Iron Hands, I got to give my man of the match to the humble 15-man Tac Squad, who not only took the charge of your Contemptor, but then killed the dang thing, and managed to keep scoring along the entire way. So I was pretty happy to see that.
Definitely was. I expected the Contemptor to really mush them up in combat, but with probably the worst duelist of Contemptor I've seen in my life, the most kills he got was from the explosion, wasn't it?
That's true. He was only killing 1, maybe 2 people every turn, and then it was the explosion that actually killed 3. So what's your plans for your army? So you're working on the vehicles, you're going to add some other stuff. What do you have in the pipeline?
So currently in the pipeline, what I'm planning on doing is adding a couple Sabres and Predators to really leverage on the outnumbering buff the Night Lords get, as each vehicle does count as 10. Furthermore, I do plan on bringing more assault squads to the table and finishing up a large unit of content car Terminators.
Those are beautiful
will be
models.
fun.
Yeah, those are really nice models.
And aside from that as well, most of my army would be mainly conversion bits. I'd like to spice up the characters a bit more, get a few options coming in, and especially when that new melee box set comes out, a lot of veterans.
I think so as well. Yeah, it's a really beautiful army. Thank you so much for bringing it. And again, I hope you had a good time, and we would love to see you on the channel again. So for those of you that have stuck with us this far, again, we thank you for all the support. Like, subscribe, keep the comments coming. If you think that we made a mistake on something, don't mind if you leave us constructive criticism. We do appreciate all the support, and we do really love engaging with you. So until the next time, we will catch you on the next Bat Rep.
For the War Master.